presentation, we talked about the new policy introduced by the Central Bank of Nigeria on cash withdrawal limits. We looked at the effect as well as how business organizations can structure their payment process to accommodate this new policy created by the CBN. We talked about categorizing your payments into imprest and out of imprest payments. So today we are going to be focused on implementing control measures or putting in place control measures within our imprest funds in order to reduce or prevent the occurrence of fraud. My name is Oyekemi Ajayi, and today I'm going to be talking you through how to implement these controls to reduce fraud. We can categorize imprest into two. This is just a simple categorization. One is around office imprest and the other relates to employee imprest. So we can say the office imprest is for transactions relating to the office itself, and then we say employee imprest will be your cash advance. There are instances where employees request for cash advance, raising an IOU for a particular expense. Yes, still related to the organization, but the difference here is that it is given to the employee. The funds is given to the employee to carry out a particular assignment or transaction within the organization, which would be retired, and then evidence of payment provided. So we're going to categorize it into that bucket. The very first step is to have money insurance in place. Simply put, we are saying have insurance on your cash so that if there is an occurrence of theft within the organization, the extent of loss is reduced. Taking it a step further, we would now look at as how it relates to the employees, but remember that this is still all within the organization. So for mid-sized organizations that have the accountants just keep the cash or the imprest within the organization, you keep it in form of cash within the organization, we are saying no, scale up, have an account designated for this. Let that amount be paid or be put into that account, the bank account, and then when funds are required, it can be taken from that account. The reason is to ensure, one, it is properly tracked. Two, reconciliation would be done. We'll still go into reconciliation. Reconciliation will be done on a weekly basis. It can also be done on a daily basis depending on the extent of transactions. It is easy to track when the money is kept in a bank account than when you have it as cash put in your pedestal or in your cupboard within the organization. So what we are saying in essence is that this amount should be banked. We also say that this particular account should not be mixed with your individual account. It should be a separate account. The head of account should have details of this particular account, under consideration. Taking it a step further, we're going to be looking at authorization and approval basically. So I've broken it into 3 steps. The very first is the request unit. That's the department or the individual, the person requesting for this amount, or let's say the amount to carry out a repair in the organization. So the first is the request unit, and they would initiate the request. It will go to the next level, which will be authorization. There has to be somebody in the organization that would authorize the release of the payment that has been requested for. And the last stage will be approval. There has to be someone who is more senior to the person who authorized the payment to approve the payment or the particular transaction under consideration. So what we've said in essence is it must at least pass through these 3 phases. 1 is the request phase, 2 is authorization, and 3 is approval. Taking it a step further, this can be done via email. And then supporting documents to back up the request should be attached to the email as well before authorization and approval is given. This must also be recorded in the GL, particularly if it relates to cash advance as given to an employee. I must also mention here that it must be retired. You must have a particular number of days, maybe 30 days or 60 days, that is given to staff to retire amounts that have been given to them. I think the ideal is 30 days, but I must put this caveat that it also depends on the nature of the transaction in question. You have to critically look at it, but the minimum that is acceptable in every industry is 30 days at the minimum. And finally, we talk about reconciliation. This must be properly done at the end of the month. Reconciliation, as said earlier, should also be done weekly, because if you have a lot of transactions and you wait till the end of the month, there's a possibility that some items might be omitted or missed in the process. I must also mention that when you give employees cash advance, ensure that you follow through with them to provide supporting documents or to provide evidence when they are retiring. This is very key, because in some instances, events of fraud could arise in those areas. So we need to ensure that we cross all the T's and dot all the I's as it relates to reconciliation with the books. I should also mention that this is a very critical aspect for every organization, because it's relating to funds, it's relating to cash, and cash is the lifeblood of an organization, so it has to be properly managed. The financial controller or the head of accounts must be on top of his game when it relates to cash in the organization. For some businesses, when you look at the accounts, particularly the GL, the cash has its own ledger, petty cash as well, your imprest, they all have their own ledger, so that you can easily trace what is going on in there, look at supporting documents, try to tie it with the amounts that is stated in there, and then where there are gaps, you can take out corrective measures, or maybe drill down, get the internal auditors to check to see where the gaps must have arisen within the organization. I hope this information has been very useful. I hope you have learned a lot. I encourage you to follow me if you have not. Like, share this video, because it's going to be very useful and very impactful. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening.